Hello, welcome to another lecture, another open lecture. We're talking about polyglots and polyglotism. Um, I wanted to start by sort of speaking about it in the sense that it seems a very popular fad or skill to acquire in the last 5 to 6 years. And I find it interesting as I've sort of tried to figure out, but I think there is three reasons why there is this language acquisition culture. And I guess it also relates down to aspects of academia, dark academia, and that sort of milieu. But I would say the three things to begin with are validation chasing, so intellectualism, and then second, the need to sort of create bridges between interpersonal and social and political dynamics. So, for example, friendship, work, or living overseas, like I have myself. Um, and the third is interest and curiosity, so a wish to kind of to understand, obviously, another culture other than your own. So I think that the reasons are these. Validation chasing and intellectualism. I think that, well, of course, that comes with competition over cooperation to a certain degree, and intellect over ego and ego boosting over this idea of trying to understand because you want to relate to another culture or another person in a more intimate way. I think this idea of validation chasing in this form of intellectualism associated with polyglottism is yet another way that perhaps the late stages of where we are in neoliberalism have a way to, inculcate people to compete not just with their own city or their own town for resources, for jobs, especially for jobs, but also for things such as competition in a larger framework of not just their state or their country, but even their region, and then, of course, the biggest within the globalization itself. And so I think that that makes sense to a degree. And of course, on that level, in terms of the global level of language acquisition and polyglottism, many people realistically speak only one second language, which would be the lingua franca of the world, which of course is English, which is the language I am speaking in right now. But I think that that's of course because of American preeminence since World War II, and also the cultural imperialism of the Anglo-American experience. Um, so I think that it's also now transmogrified more so with this intellectualism in the YouTube space because of this idea of competitive intellectualism and competitive ego, which has always been a case and always been a thing, but now more so it's hyper focalized through this medium of YouTube and others as well, Duolingo, etc. It's another competitive metric in and under late neoliberalism, I would claim. I think that, though, the lingua francas of the future are not just English, but I think English, Spanish, obviously Mandarin to a certain degree, but surprisingly also French, primarily because of West Africa and its influence still there as kind of the lingua franca with a region that speaks well over 100 different languages. In terms of the next point of social and political and this idea around friendships, especially in work and living overseas, I lived briefly in Europe. I also in Italy and France, and I also lived a little bit longer in Japan. And obviously, I live in Australia and New Zealand, but mostly Australia. So I mean, as a child, I went to Catholic school, and so I learned Italian, and I also learned French. Um, and then living in these countries, those came obviously into play. I mean, I could get by in English, but it was also helpful to speak some Italian and some French. Um, and then when I went to Japan, I also learned Japanese, but that was more for need, really. I lived there and I had the choice, so I had to make that choice. I had no choice, I should say, but to speak Japanese. And I would call my Japanese konbini nihongo, which means essentially the Japanese of the convenience store. So very, very basic. But then when I came back, I also learned Sinhala, Tamil, and Hindi. because I worked in kitchens and I worked in cafes and I worked in spaces where there were a lot of these people that that was these South Asian people, and that was their first language or their mother language, as they say. Um, and and then also I know some Slovak as well, because some of my close friends are Slovakians, and some Czech as well, because they're very similar languages, and a little bit of Mandarin and some Cantonese, because of friendships. And I'm therefore a kind of combination, I feel, of these all three, because the third one is that, yes, it's curiosity. I think I do have a general interest in curiosity and a wish to understand these various cultures, especially South Asian culture, because it seems so redolent with difference to the Anglo-American experience or the Anglo-Australian experience. And the same, to a lesser degree, with Japanese at this point in my life, simply because I know Japanese culture so well, and it does have many correlatives to English-speaking culture, or non-American English-speaking culture, I should say. But I think language is the key to opening and understanding a culture, and I think that's what probably a lot of people do use it for. But English is this disembodied lingua franca because it is spoken everywhere, and so it's very hard to affix a very set, salient cultural identity to it to a large degree. I mean, I'm sure you can through the American experience, and to some degree through the Australian, but I think we still always refer back to England, or we refer back to some idea of this island nation, where they do speak, or where this language is from. And I think, it's on that point, it's really strange that the Anglo-American civilization is a monolinguistic. Historically, this is quite rare. Even elites in the past spoke many languages, similar to how Indians or Africans or Europeans, even today, usually speak 2 to 3 languages minimum. And so I find that a strange aberration, but also one which I suppose speaks to a certain hubris of the culture, the English-speaking culture, which sees of itself as intrinsically, on some level, and perhaps language is the way that this is projected or represented, as superior to others, because this idea that they never had to learn another language or a second language to get on, essentially, has a sort of chauvinistic taint to it, and so I find it curious that many people in my social reality, many of them, apart from my friends who are already by circumstance polyglots, either they're South Asian people or African people, or they're from Europe or something like this. Many don't speak a second language, or try to even attempt to, apart from perhaps French, because French and English are so similar in many ways, and 40% of English is French anyway. One of my close friends is actually almost bilingual. I mean, he can speak Spanish almost as well as he can speak English. And so I think it's rather interesting that this is the case, but I guess language really is just curiosity, and it's the keys to a culture. And I think that's pretty much where one should begin when trying to learn a language. But as it is, I think that's enough for today. I would be interested to hear what other people have to say or think about polyglottism and its rise the last few years. But for now, I want to say that it is simply something which I think will be ongoing into the future. More people want to acquire more, and we're living in a more highly globalized reality, and this will just simply continue. I think more Asiatic languages will come to the fore, especially in Australia, which has been European language based in the past. But anyway, for now, we shall see. I want to say thank you for watching, and yes, do leave a comment if you feel inclined, and thank you for watching. Have a lovely day. Bye.